So this morning I wanted to review character count, and then I'm going to talk about basic object orientation. So we're going to continue writing our algorithms over the first 2 weeks. So if you like algorithms, good news, you have another week full of it. If you don't, that's too bad. We're just going to choose one of these three people. We'll create a quick algorithm. Since there's three of them, I'm just going to have a random sample of 1, 2, 3. So let me make this. I have 3 windows here: iTerm, Google Chrome, and then my text editor.
Excuse me.
Yep.
John, sorry to interrupt, but I know you do that every morning. Is that so you can quickly swipe between the...
Yep, that's pretty much it, yeah.
Got it.
So the question was, why do I have 3 separate windows? It's basically so I can scroll really quickly through it and I don't have to, click around and, make windows small and things like that. When I'm working on an external screen, I just keep them up in separate corners of the window. But otherwise it would look a little something like this. And then iTerm would fit on the top right-hand corner, but this is a really tiny screen, so I don't want you to deal with that. All right, so let's do a quick one let's do it in Ruby. Does anyone know how to choose a number between 1 and 3 really, really fast? One line of code.
Random?
Random, what?
0.3.
0.3. I like it. So this is like a very, very simple program that just chooses between a lower range that you provided and the upper range. I think it includes one or the other. I don't know. Let's find out. 3. So it goes all the way up to the top and also goes all the way down to the bottom. So in this case, I would have to do 1.3 to make sure that I keep within that range. So rand, you provided a range 1, a lower limit and upper limit. The dot in the middle means that it's inclusive of the 2 at the end. If you do ... 3 dots, it's not inclusive of the ones at the end. All right, so the first person, actually, let's run it one more time. All right, person number 2, I'm going to review your code, which is John Conway. All right, first things first, let me clone this down. We'll read through the code, and we'll talk through the pseudocode and things like that. We'll just do this entire problem. So I'm here on my desktop. I'm going to clone this down from the web, which means that I'm downloading from GitHub down to my particular machine. And you can kind of see, I don't know if you noticed it, but on the bottom right-hand corner, this Sharkout didn't exist before. But when I cloned it down, it downloaded onto my computer. So how do I see everything on my desktop without actually looking in the background, this transparent area over here?
LS.
Actually, you can't see the Oh, you can kind of see it. LS. All right, so I've got all of my stuff here. How do I change from where I'm at into the place I want to go? CD char count. All right, I'm going to open this up in Sublime. Now I'm here on my master branch, which means that if I go over here to the left and I look at, let's say we want to do this in JavaScript, I look at char count. There's nothing inside of here right now, but I know that John has his code written because when I click on files changed, there's a bunch of stuff that's different here. His branch is named Conway. How do I check out to an already existing branch? Get checkout. Is there a -b in there?
No.
What's the -b? Creating a new one and switching to it. So checking out Conway. I don't know if it's
capital C.
All right. It looks like they really do care about the capital C. Interesting. All right. So when I go back over here, you can see that before I had nothing, and now I have all the bits of code over here. Let's read through the algorithm. I'm going to talk through some of the steps, and then we'll read through this code that we have here. So let's take a look. Char count. It looks like my input is going to be a random string. And then from there, I'm going to keep track of all the letters and how many times they occur. And on top of that, I want to keep track of the one with the most occurrences coming all the way at the top and the one with the least number of occurrences coming all the way at the bottom. It appears from here that they don't care about alphabetical order once you get down to the bottom, as long as the first one is the letter with the most occurrences and so on and so forth. So the way that I try to break this down is, let's think about it in your own head. if you were to, like, remember, a computer's super fast, but super stupid. In your brain, how would you can take a look very quickly at AAABBC, and you would know, I have 3 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C. But how does your brain solve that problem? Like, you can't have magic steps in your pseudocode where it's like, just count the thing. That's not the way that it works. So how did you keep track of this?
So JavaScript?
No, it doesn't matter. This is pseudocode. So we're doing just the pseudo before we even write any sorts of code.
It had to recognize that each letter corresponds to a number, like that represents its order. So that A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3.
No. So let's say let me give you another word. Okay. So, all right. So how would you count all the different letters here? Yeah.
You have to realize that there are different characters to begin with.
Okay.
And then you would have to create, essentially, you have to recognize each differentiating character, and then you would have to compare that subgroup throughout the entirety of your, I might be like flying through this, but throughout what you have written there.
Cool. I don't disagree with that, but that makes no sense to like a 5-year-old. Let's think about a 5-year-old. Like, if you had to teach a kid how to count letters, how would you do that? Just like, let's just even start with just the word hello. How would you tell them, like, how many occurrences of each character are there, John?
You would scan from the letter, from the first letter to the last letter, and you'd be looking for a specific letter each time.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, okay, I see an H here. Are there any other H's? So you start with the letter H, and then you count. How many times does it show up? Looks like it just shows up once, because this is not an H. This is not. So when I break this down, this becomes HELLO. So the first letter is an H. Are there any other H's? I don't see any other H's, so this shows up one time. The next time through, I see the letter E. I'm going to put it over here. Are there any other E's? Doesn't look like it, so I'm just going to put 1. And then down the line I go to L. I see 1 L. Is there another L? Looks like there's another one, so I'm going to say that there's 2 of them. And then finally I get to the O. Is there any other O's? And no, there's just 1. It's kind of like, if I were to do it, I would just write all the letters out and just like do little dashes, and then the cross across the 4 and to get the 5 and stuff like that. Sean?
It's just occurs to me now. Could you accomplish this in a math function? Like a math method?
Probably. So this is like I feel like this is how most people's brains go through it, in terms of like, I see this letter. Is there anything else? No? All right, then it shows up one time. Is there anything, like, and then we get to the E. Is there any other E? No, now just say it's 1. Is there any other L's? Okay, looks like there's 2 of them. So I'm just counting like that extra 1. But now I need to translate this into code somehow. Eric.
John, one thing that I struggle with is how deep our pseudocode has to get. So for example, we could have also taken this maybe even one step deeper and said, all right, for the L, for example, you need somewhere to store the instances of the previous L, and then add on the second one. I don't know if I'm being articulate there.
I understand what you're saying there. Yeah, so the question was like, how much does my pseudocode need to do?
Yeah.
So the way that I approach most of these questions is, 1, what's your input, what's your output? That's what my first question all the time. Okay. What's my input and what's my output supposed to be? Number 2, I try to solve it in my brain first. Like, okay. I don't try to jump into any code or like, do I need an array or a hash or something like that? No, it's just like, how do you solve this in your brain? Then third, then I write all my pseudocode steps out. And I will say that the more detail that you put in, the less juggling that you need to do inside of your brain. There's like there's fewer hurdles that you need to go through.
Okay.
So more details better.
I like found, and I especially like this in Ruby, that as far as like pseudocoding goes, I can like write the most basic blocks and then comments within them to sort of know what will be filled out there, so that I have kind of both the code and the pseudocode structure at the same time.
You could do something like that. Yeah, it's because if you're doing an if statement It's
Yeah.
just like a very easy thing, and then you could just
As
drag
opposed
it
to
over.
having all the pseudocode just at the top.
Yeah,
or
that's what I'm
just
saying. Like just real basic broad strokes, but like, you know, opening, closing things, just so I kind of have it laid out.
So I'm going to just grab all of this, put it over here. Actually, why don't I just drag this over? And we're just going to We're just going to write out the pseudocode steps. So we've understood our input and our output. So the input is going to be, it looks like it's a string. The output's going to be a giant hash of letters ordered from the number of occurrences from top to bottom. Doesn't look like they really particularly care about like if it's supposed to be, like if it's in alphabetical order. Next, we solved it in our brains, and now we're just going to write it out in pseudocode. One, create a function. This is like, I'm all about really, really small wins. So create a function called Sharkout. Sharkout takes a string as an argument. From there, I'm going to iterate over each one of those strings, because remember before it looked a little something like this. We started with H, we started with the first letter, and we kept going, we kept going, we kept going. But because we know the input's going to be a string, we also know what the output's going to be. It's going to be a hash. We saw that from the original problem. So maybe I'll create an answer hash or object, because this is JavaScript. And then somewhere down the bottom, I'm going to return the answer. First things first, I'm going to iterate over each letter in the string. My thoughts are, you have an answer object. If that letter already exists inside of your answer object, then I'm going to add 1 to it. Otherwise, I'm going to set it to 1. So you kind of like, before you had an empty thing, the first time through you have an H. So your answer object when you first start is just this. If there's already a letter H inside of there, fantastic, just add 1 to the value. Otherwise, just set H to 1, because that's the number of occurrences that it comes up. Sean?
This is like, I did that same thing, but what I was trying to figure out, is there a way that that if it doesn't exist and you simply declare, like you can't do a plus equals 1 without it existing.
Correct.
But is there no way of getting around that? Like without,
So if the letter is included in the object, add 1 to the included as a key in the object, add 1 to the value. Otherwise, set the key equal to the letter and the value equal to 1.
Actually, is in Ruby. But, you know, I couldn't find a way to do it. I don't know.
I think this is it. So 1, I create the function, takes an argument as like a string. I'm going to create an answer object, so the curly braces. I'm going to iterate over each letter in the string. So I start with H, then I move to E, then L, L, and O. And then this is the big portion of the stuff that's like, this is the actual code portion. If the letter is included in the key as an object, so the first time through there's nothing inside of it, I'm going to add 1 to the value. Obviously, this doesn't occur. So I'm going to say, if the key is equal, if there's a key equal to the letter, otherwise set the key equal to a letter, so H, and the value is going to equal 1. And then I'm just going to keep going through over and over until this is finished. So the second time through, I have an E, which is equal to 1. The third time through, I have an L, it's equal to 1. But the fourth time through, the second L, the letter is already included, so I'm going to add 1 to the answer objects and change this to 2, so on and so forth. I'm missing one thing here. I'm going to just sort by key, sort by value from top to bottom, like in terms of like the highest occurrence first, then the lowest occurrence last, and then return the answer. This is my pseudocode. Hopefully this is of some help to somebody. Let's take a look at John's code, and we will try to break this down as much as possible. All right, so it looks like this, John has something, he has 2 different methods. So we will figure out what's going on here. So under char count, which was the original, he has a function that takes in a string, and he has this char hash. Character hash, I'm guessing that's what it stands for. And it looks like it's the answer of some sort. So he's got that he's got this pseudocode thing, and then this pseudocode thing. So he sets an empty answer up top, and then an empty answer in the full answer on the very bottom. So he's got processed array, which is going to be create array from string, which takes the string. So this doesn't exist on its own. He created a completely separate method over here. So this particular method takes a word, lowercases everything, splits it on the spaces, and then sorts it, like alphabetically.
Yeah, so
Yeah. So my question is, I don't think you need to do it.
Okay.
It's fine. I don't think you need this alphabetically, do you?
no.
No. So the first things first, he takes the word, and then he lowercases all the letters, because I could have like capital A for apple, or a bunch of like weird letters, a lowercase and uppercase, and then he splits them. So you turn this into an array, right? Okay. So that's fine. You don't actually need to sort it into an array, because you can iterate over a string. But arrays are fine too, if that's the way that you think that's okay. I probably don't need the sort, but it looks like it works either way. Then he's got a for loop, starts at 0, goes until the very last, the last letter inside of the word, and then goes up by 1. I usually do I++, but ++I, I'm guessing works. If the word is equal to a space, I'm going to splice. What does splice do?
Splice
Separates
It
that chunk.
separates. It pretty much splits it where you can find it to split it at.
Kind of.
Right.
Kind of, John?
Splice mutates the array. It either takes the value out or cuts part of it off, depending on how you set it.
Yeah. I guess what you're going for here is just I'm going to skip all the spaces.
Yeah, I was just trying to remove the spaces. Although
Okay.
I think Splice actually returns them as you're
Okay.
removing them. So I just should have gone through the docs and looked for a way to mutate an array without returning whatever I'm splicing out of it.
Sure, that's fair. Eric, you had a question?
It's no longer relevant. Thank you.
Okay, Tristan?
To eliminate those spaces, I'm through doing the anagrams too. I think it was yesterday. I came across dot trim. Is that
Dot trim?
That's what John was
Yeah,
doing.
that's fair. I think it works in both, but I'm not positive. But there's a method somewhere. Usually, you can just know that like I need to get rid of all the spaces because I don't care about the spaces. I'm not counting the occurrences of the spaces. I'm counting the occurrences of the letters. There's a method somewhere in each language that will get rid of spaces. Yeah.
One question was, how do you iterate over a string?
How do you iterate over a string?
Yeah.
All right, so when you iterate over an array, each index inside the array has an index. Each item inside of the array has an index, right? Same thing for a string. So if I give you an array with 5 things in it, there's a length of 4. You can start at 0 to get the first thing and 4 to get the last thing. Same thing with the string.
You just can't do it with a number.
You can do it with the number. Oh, you just can't do it with, I see what you mean. Yeah. All right, so tell me, John, what were you thinking with this, this particular method? Why did you keep it in 2 different places?
I just wanted to not have Sharkout be this giant function that's doing like 5 different things, because then I would, in order to test it, I would need to be constantly breaking into this single monolithic function. So I just made create array from string, and then once that was doing what I wanted it to, I just plugged it into Sharkout, since I know that if something's going wrong, it's not going to be with that function up there.
Sure. Okay, so for the recording, I asked John why he had a separate function called create array from string, and then why he had all this extra code. And he said it's because I didn't want to have one char count method with 20 lines of code in it, because when something breaks, I have to look inside those 20 lines and figure out what broke. And this is a good way of writing software that I want to bring up. It's called the single responsibility principle, which means that every single method, and once we get to classes today, basically everything that you do should do exactly one thing. And you should make it as readable as possible, because if something breaks inside of char count and it's 100 lines long, let's just say it's 100 lines long, and it's broken on line 72, you have to figure out what happened between line 1 and 71 in order to figure out what broke on line 72. Whereas if you have a different small little methods and it breaks at a certain point, you can more easily find that little bit of code.
What do you call this pure functions in JavaScript? What do you call it in Ruby?
I mean, I think it's this. You could probably call it the same thing. We just call it single response. That goes. I think that goes above. Pure functions are nested within single responsibility principles. Yeah. Okay. So he has an answer. He returns the answer. He's going to basically grab all the letters and create an array of them. Right? Seems to be like that.
Yep.
And then you have processed array. So you're saying for word in processed array, word is it should be letter. Yeah, because what we did was if we gave the word apple, he split it over here. So it should actually, this is not word, this should be letter. For letter in processed array, and I think this is the code that we wrote here on the right. If the character hash with the answer has the letter already, then it does not have the letter already, then I'm going to set that equal to 1. Otherwise, if it already includes it, I'm going to just add 1 to it. Seems to work to me. I'm fairly pleased with this solution. We're gonna make a few changes in just a bit. Sean?
If you were gonna do this like as a code challenge for someone, you know, I don't because I've never done a whiteboard thing. As essentially you're saying you just write out logic. So like, but if you had to like demo this with someone, would you in the demo actually submit multiple functions that are calling on themselves, or would you just do a monolithic one, or like what would the best practice?
Sure. So the question was, if you are going to, let's say you're going to get this challenge and you're going to submit it to somebody. If you're going to take this challenge and submit it to somebody, I would say you want to put your best foot forward. If that means that I feel like we can refactor this into like 3 lines. So I'm going to do that all in one function. If the way that you think is I'm going to show, like I may not be able to do it all using like all the built-ins and all the fanciness, but I know I can split it up and keep those small methods clean, we can go ahead and do that one too. It really depends on what you think is the best way of doing things. Personally, I know that they're looking for brevity, but every single shop is so different.
Brevity,
so like if I can solve this in 2 lines, solve it in 2 lines.
Okay.
If I can't solve it in 2 lines, that's okay. Like they don't really care. They just want to see that you know how to use all of these methods, you know how to do single responsibility and things like that. So I agree with number 1, this line here and this line here. Char count takes an argument called a string, create an answer object, iterate over each one of those strings. I don't think we need this whole thing over here, so I'm going to remove it just for now. First things first, John lowercased everything, and he got rid of spaces. So I know that it's, how do I lowercase? I don't know. How do I lowercase letters in JavaScript? I'm just doing the Google stuff. So I don't really know because I'm not a robot and I don't memorize all this stuff. So I just Google it. How do I lowercase letters in JavaScript? The first thing comes up. W3 Schools is a company that basically gives out web standards, so you can reliably look at this particular group. So it looks like I have a string, and when I do 2 lowercase and I invoke it with these parentheses, it lowercases it. All right, so I have my first bit. The second one, I want to get rid of all the spaces. How do I get rid of spaces in a string in JavaScript? All right, so I got a bunch of Stack Overflow. Is there anything? Okay, I see a W3 Schools. I know that this is a standard rather than a community-driven answer. So I have a whole bunch of strings over here with a bunch of spaces, and I trim. Let's take a look at how this works. I'm going to try it. Looks like I have a whole bunch of extra spaces. All right, so I have all this giant string over here, and when I trim it, I get hello world with a single space in the between. I still don't like that. I want to get rid of all the spaces. Let's take a look. Remove all white spaces from text. Okay, this looks promising. All right, it looks like it's a regular expression. I don't know what a regular expression is right now. This symbolic stuff looks strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just copy it for right now. Next week we're going to go over regex on Tuesday. But basically what this is, this dot replace is saying that anytime that there is a space, so they're looking for like a particular expression. So anything between these forward slashes, so it's this single space globally, I'm going to replace it with an empty string. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll let's say, I'm going to combine this all in one thing. Let I equal 0. Let's change the original string. So we'll say const modified string equals string dot to lowercase dot replace this whole thing. Yes.
Why do we use const in this instance instead of using let?
Because so that's a great question. So the question was, why did we use const instead of let? So what's the difference between const and let?
Well, const was for something that doesn't change,
Mm-hmm.
and let is something that will change.
Right. So let is something that will change. So on line 2, we have an object that we're going to write over and then take things away, something that's going to be modified. This modified string on line 3, I decided to use a const because once I change it, I'm probably not going to change it again. So I took the original string, I'm lowercasing it, I'm getting rid of the spaces, and I'm not going to touch that thing anymore.
Because I was really bothered by this when I looked at the difference between bar and these things, and everything that I've read says basically try to use const, and if it breaks, then revert back to let.
Yeah.
Because you know you're going to
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So yeah, use const most of the time unless it breaks, and then go back to let. That's an okay way of going about it too. So I'm going to do let I equal 0. I'm going to go I is less than modified string dot length, and then I plus plus. So I'm going to iterate over each one of these letters in the string. If the letter is included as a key in the object, add 1 to the value. Otherwise, set the key equal to the letter and the value equal to 1. I don't like that. I'm just going to flip this. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do if something, and then it looks like I have an else block as well. So this first case is basically saying if char count at modified string of I is, if there's nothing there, so it's equals undefined, I'm just going to do that same thing as equal to 1. Otherwise, if there's something there, it's just this plus equals 1.
Can you iterate that with plus plus, or is it
Yes.
plus equals 1?
I think plus equals 1 is fine, but I just generally just do plus plus. I think this is it. We'll find out for certain in just a second when I run these specs, and hopefully nothing breaks. So let's take a look again. So we created a function called character count, took a string as an object, as an argument, created an answer, and I returned the answer on the bottom. So the first things first, I'm lowercasing everything. I'm replacing the any spaces with an empty string. I'm iterating over each letter. So if I have a word like hello, the letter at the first index, which is the 0th place, is going to be A, and I'm going all the way to the very end. So I have this for loop over here. If the character hash, the answer, has that particular does not have that particular letter, I'm going to set it equal to 1. If there is already a letter in its place, like this L, like when the 4th time through, we saw that L already existed, we're going to add 1 to it, and then we just return. John?
You don't have to put equals undefined for the first if. You can just literally put, exclamation bang or whatever instead of equals undefined. That'll make it shorter.
Sure, we could do that. Let me actually rewrite this. Let's go back. I don't like the undefined thing. I think it's confusing for people. So let's go back. We'll just do if there's something there. If there's anything here, I'm going to add 1 to it. So I'm going to do a real quick Sublime shortcut. I put my cursor anywhere on the line, do Command Control, and press up, so I don't have to copy and paste a bunch of times. And then it looks like I can just do this.
That's awesome. What was it again?
Command Control. And then up.
Here, let me just put it here.
Or I guess down if you're going down.
All right, so here, I'm going to actually, so I want to move this line up to line 9. So I'm just going to put my cursor anywhere on the page and anywhere on the line, not highlighting anything. Command, Control, up, down. I'm just going to put that there. Saves you a little bit of time. I think this is it, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. If there's something there, add 1 to it. Otherwise, just set it equal to 1. I think that's it. Let's run the specs and we'll see what happens. What did I do? A bunch of trues. Cool. I think that was it. So each one of these things, one, understand your input, understand what your output is also going to be. Next, write your pseudocode out. Like, try to figure out in your head first before you do anything. Like, how would you break this down step by step for a 5-year-old? If you had a small kid, like, how would you explain this problem to them? Then create steps for yourself every single bit of the way, and then just start translating line by line by line by line. And I think that should take most people there. I don't think there's any other way I would do this. I think it's pretty much what I expected. Cool. All right, let's take an 8-minute break. We'll be back at 9:45 to cover something new.